Isha, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
This is our first Blactrospective episode, doing it live in this fashion. So thank you so much in advance for your patience because we're going to be working it out for this episode. But nonetheless, we're going to have fun. We're hopefully going to have a deep, I say hopefully, but we are going to have deep conversation and we're going to try to see if we can at least get started. You know what I mean? Like start the conversation with us. We may not have the solution at the end of the episode, but we're going to deep dive into a it can sometimes be intense. It's what people make it, right? So a very thought-provoking topic. So I'm Moby. I know if you guys are already a fan of the podcast and if you listen to it, you've probably heard me say Moby, Molin, or Moby. We're settling on Moby, okay? We started Blactrospective, or the inception of Blactrospective, in 2019, and we have 7 episodes currently out on Spotify and on Spreaker. And these episodes go anywhere between talking about doing a deep dive and looking introspectively and also looking at society when it comes to implicit bias or when it comes to dating someone who's culturally different, and even why representation matters to not only to us as adults, but also the young generation that's coming behind us. So Blactrospective started as an idea of just like this therapy session for myself as an individual. And then I started to meet these cool women, kept on running into them. And that's where Ish comes in and also B Speaks comes in.
I'm Ish, tagged as Ish the Empress, and I've been loving doing this for the first 7 episodes, so I'm happy to be trying out new things on live.
We still have one more individual who's a bit, but we don't want to delay anyone any longer. I want to introduce a trained mental health therapist as well as a life coach, which is her profession that's in the forefront. She's also the author of The Heart of the Matter. We're super excited. The conversation of the day, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, this one is something that's a little bit of controversy because it is touching on essentially the N word. Like who can say it, who can't say it? Should there be a cap on it? Or should we just let it be? Is there an emotional tie to it? What are the implications in continuing to say it, even with us as Black people? And then what does that look like even outside of our culture? So without further ado, we're going to introduce Miss Lorena Jefferson. Hello, Lorena.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you, honey?
Good. Mental health therapist, also on the forefront as a life coach. I love the fact that you are a life coach that has the backing of being a mental health therapist. So I wanted to notate on that. And you also wrote a book in between all of that. Tell the audience how you got there, essentially.
It was so much going on. And so for me, I was a system kid. I always share that I was a system kid. And so what I mean by that is I came through the system of foster care. And I went through a turbulent childhood. And so all through my growing up and my evolving, I had a million questions. Who, what, when, and why? Why are people the way they are? How can parents do what they do? Why is this happening? Why did I have to grow up in poverty? There were so many questions. And so all those things led me to trying to find what is the answer to it all. And so in my journey, I just kept coming across milestones and milestones and milestones. And so as I learned, I ran into a lot of people. And so with that, it really spurred me on to grow even more, to get more education, to seek even more, to search out things even more, and to become more of my authentic self, because I realized that I wasn't the only one. I realized that we're all looking for the answer. We all want to know why, who, what, when, and why, determining whatever it is we're trying to get to. And so that was my journey. And out of it, I decided, how dare I not share this type of wisdom because we all have one life and one journey. But we can continue to help each other evolve with less trauma, with less struggle, if we would just share the gems and the wisdom that we learn along the way. So, what is one of the best ways to do it? Facilitate, teach, write books, and educate people. So that's kind of how I got to the point of where I am as far as the books and the things that I do, the teaching and the coaching.
The part for me is like, so most people are like the who, what, and where, like they have those questions, but normally it's either something that's internalized and not discussed, and it manifests in different ways, or you do go the route of trying to learn it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you fall into that profession because of.
Absolutely.
So what made you go into the profession and then let it evolve into being a life coach?
So, disclaimer on the side, I'm a comedian because of what I'm getting ready to say. But nobody's paid me, so I'm not sure how authentic that is. But the truth of the matter is, I have 4 master's degrees. I've been in school for over 20 years. And the reason that
A few moments later.
Thank you, Rebecca. We're going to try to get Lorena back on. How's everybody feeling so far? I'm looking at them in the comments. So thank you for joining. It's Bryn Life and Latin Prince, Daily Active. Thank you so much. Nasia, I see you. Rebecca, thank you. Thank you for joining. Pretty good. Thank you for being so positive. D-Town Panda, thank you. Can I get a show of hands of how many people have used the N-word? Don't be afraid. We're not going to shame anybody here. It's just to start the conversation. When I said, great, really want to hear how others view the usage of the N-word. Does anybody want to talk about? We're not shaming anyone. It's just, it really is to ask the question. So how many people have heard other people use the N-word? We'll start with that are Black first. Can we start with that? Okay, so I see 3 hands. Yep. LaShonda, I'm thinking you're saying that you do use the N-word or heard Black people use it. Okay, so that's the hands up. Okay, now how many people have heard people that use the N-word outside of, I like to say, the African descendant culture? LaShonda said 2 hands up.
2 hands up on that.
Yeah. Okay. Is that all? I'm gonna put my hands up too. Ish, do you have your hands up? Only on social media. That's one we're gonna have to delve into. I see that we have Lorena back, so I'm gonna pull her back in. But LaShonda, hold on to that thought because we're gonna talk about it.
Hi.
Hey again. We lost you for a minute.
I know it just went out, so I apologize.
It's okay. I believe that I also went out. So Ish, do not let me lose that talking point because LaShonda said that she's heard people outside of the culture say the N-word. So while we were getting you back on, we were just asking how many people say it and how many people have heard people outside of the African descendant culture say it. So we had about 3 in the group that said that they say it. And then I know LaShonda for sure, and It's Bryn Life has also said that they've heard people outside of the culture say it. LaShonda has seen it on social media, and It's a Life said that she's heard it, especially in the South. We're going to go back and touch on that in our discussion portion, but before we do that, we wanted to talking about you and your accomplishments, and you started talking about your degrees. Like you have, how many? You said you had 3, 4? Girl, is that excellent?
It sounds one way, but trust me, it was just a journey. I was trying to figure out the answers, and it seemed like no one had them. So I thought maybe the books had them. And so, I just was trying to find my way in. What's so amazing about it is a lot of times we don't realize that we're naturally evolving into our authentic self. And so even though I went and I got the degrees and I did the things that I did, the truth of the matter is I was already that because my life had taught me how to be an effective life coach, right? And so It's just that the world doesn't really show you a lot of respect unless you do it through their systems. And so it's nothing good or bad or right or wrong about a degree, but my search was a personal search. And so just so happened, those are the avenues I took to try to find my answers to why. And now they come in handy because I live a life and have to pay bills. So it worked out.
Yeah. So what was your book based?
The book is a self-help book. It's called The Heart of the Matter. And the reason I called it The Heart of the Matter is I felt like it was God's love letter for me. Because although I had been educated, although I had been through a lot and I had learned a lot and I had journeyed a lot, one of the things that I had never done is acknowledged that inner child. I had never acknowledged the trauma. I had never acknowledged the abuse, the physical abuse, the sexual abuse, the emotional abuse, the things that I had to come against as a child. And so what I did was what a lot of us do is we continue to evolve. And so then we create ways to create our own world. And I did that. When I did that, um, there was a time that it come in my life where I started spiraling and it was time to really face my issues. And the book was born out of that. So that's why it's called The Heart of the Matter. It is a set of self-help tools that I used, that I have used for other people, that I have given to people to use as a guideline for inner healing.
I love that because you took something that was traumatic to you and then you turned it into, instead of like internalizing it, you turned it into something that could not only help you because I'm sure it was therapeutic to you, but also be like you said earlier, like essentially passing the baton on and saying, hey, I've done it. Let me give you the steps of what I've learned, and then you take what you will from it and use it how you need to in order for you to move forward, and then pass it on to the next generation.
Absolutely. The best way to live is to die empty. That's the best life you could possibly have. And when we get that mentality, when we understand that mentality, we'll understand what life is really about. We're not here for just ourselves. We're here so that each generation can make it better and have more of a quality life than we even had. And they can do that by us sharing our wisdom and our experiences so that they don't have to go in so deep.
Sometimes self-help books get a little bit of a negative connotation. For those people who say like, I don't need a self-book, I don't feel like it's helpful, what would be your response to that?
Then you don't need it because you get to choose. You get to choose your life. Everyone is free. These tools are out here so that people who would like to utilize them can utilize them. People who decide, okay, this is something that I'm going to use because I see her past, and now I see where she is. I see this as valuable information. We set people free. We don't judge them. We don't wonder why they do what they do because we're all free and we all have free will to do whatever we want. One of the things that I can say triggered me for needing the self-help was because I actually acknowledged that I was to a point that I could not help myself. And so that's a place of humility. That's a place where we have to release the ego and say, I have one chance at this thing. And whatever tools are available, I want to knock it out of the box. I want to have the most amazing life that there is. And I don't know how. And so I'm not going to continue to pretend that I know how. I'm going to get the help that I need. And how do I know who can help me? I need to look at their fruit, look at their outcomes, see where they are. Are there anything about that situation, that book, that person that makes you want to be like them, makes you want to have the confidence they have, or the drive, or even the success that they have? So it's really about everyone just getting honest with themselves. And that's a choice.
I definitely agree with you. It's like self-help books are great, but it's only going to help you if that's the kind of help you're looking for. So not every self-help book is going to help every person.
To your point, yes, that's true. But how do you get there? How do you get to the point where you're like, I know that we covered an episode based on implicit bias, and at the end of the episode, we actually took the implicit bias test, and the results were not surprising to us because, this is called Blactrospective. So there has to be some part of you that also not only looks at society, but how you contribute to society internally. And I feel like that's what you're bringing to the book. It's asking you to look introspectively within yourself. And sometimes you don't want to look at the person in the mirror. I know sometimes I haven't wanted to, so I could see how that's a hard pill to swallow, just trying to do that.
I think it dropped from the she mentioned humility, and I think that's where humility comes in, because if you're at such a low point, you can't always pull yourself out of that, and that's usually the time where you do need to humble yourself and accept whatever help that you are getting. Like, maybe you should listen to the advice of others, even if you don't feel like what they have to say pertains to you. There might be other people that do pertain to you a bit more.
Rebecca, yes, humility and wisdom. Wisdom is also a key. You have to have the humility to accept that there's an issue and you have to look internally. And then you also have the wisdom to want to do something about it. So while we're getting Lorena back on, how many people feel like it's hard for them to look introspectively, like look in the mirror? You guys don't have anything to say?
I was gonna say, for myself personally, at least, I can say that, like, this is what you're getting. I'm gonna be authentically myself, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. It's taking the time to get there.
I definitely agree with Sean. As you get older, you kind of realize, like, wow, do the opinions of others matter to the same extent that I'm willing to?
Wisdom and self-assurance comes with age. And Town Panda said, I would say it depends on the topic of self for acceptance. Dispute said, I struggle with that, but I had a great role model, my husband, because he is okay with who he is. It absolutely helps when you have that support system and someone to lean on and an example.
Sometimes you need almost like that strong personality that's always going to hold their ground in who they are, to pull you out of your shell to become more comfortable with who you are.
Agreed. Thank you all for contributing, because yes, completely agree. Oh, I see my girl B speaking. We're gonna pull her in too. Hey girl, hey.
Hello. Hi.
Hey, boo.
Hello. This is our Three Musketeer, the third party of our Three Musketeer. This is B speaking. I'm gonna let her introduce herself before we get Lorena back on.
All right. Very cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Bianca, aka B Speaking. That is me. And so happy to be on here on live to share some topics and discussions, and very excited for this. Very excited for our first live.
Yes, this live is kind of a struggle bus live, but our audience is so amazing. Can we give a round of applause to the audience, because they've been so amazing and so patient? Thank you, audience. Thank you so much.
D-Town definitely, some things it is easy to come to terms with, but when it comes to looking at yourself effectively.
Yes, definitely on the levels. I know that I've been hearing a term a lot called high level conversation. Have any of you girls heard of that? Like high level conversation?
Maybe vaguely, but I'm uncertain.
No. No, my end.
And I don't know how loosely or how close to that they're following it, but when they say high level conversation, it's like just going beyond the day to day. And so like there's certain levels of consciousness that you have to obtain and like open up. Like, you girls probably heard about the third eye. I think it's like a rebranding of that.
That is getting out of the idea of surface level conversations.
So B, we asked the audience like how many people said the N-word, like personally said it, and show hands. And then We said how many people known, African descendants from our culture, Black culture, that Black people to say it, and then how many people knew people outside of the culture. And we had LaShonda say on social media, she's seen the N-word thrown around. So LaShonda, are you still on here? I'm gonna scroll to see if I can find you. Yes, I see you.
Okay.
LaShonda said, so, LaShonda's a community leader. I had to learn to be how to be okay first. Okay, so LaShonda, so you said you heard it on the site. Oh, yep, you're here. So you said you heard it on the site. What was the context in which it was discussed? And D the Mute says, New York City, they say it like it's nothing. I know, like it's a cultural thing. I know Fat Joe says it. And he double downs on it. So how does that make you all feel? Are you kind of like, well, it doesn't matter because it's dependent on which culture? Like if it's okay because it's like the Latino culture and those like our brown brothers and sisters? Or is it more so like, no, I don't want anybody to say it? Or it's like, oh, I want to say, I'll only let Black people say it. Where's the audience in on that? Girls, feel free to answer too. I say the audience, but feel free to answer too where you stand on it.
I do think it has become part of our culture, right? Like, I think it's part of Black culture, and then subsequently, because of that, like, it goes into other aspects of culture, like hip hop culture, I think. And then honestly, if you look at a lot of Gen Z culture, they do use the N word a lot, right? Just because it's become part of culture. So now I think it's become a cultural word for a lot of people versus, like the context of how it was maybe like when we were younger or our parents were younger, where it was more offensive. And now I think it's just kind of migrated into something else than what we used to think of it as. And some people still do, right? Because again, like we're growing, it's generational, right? Generational. And so maybe in your household you thought of it in one way, and now kind of has migrated to something else. So now hearing somebody who is probably 19 or a 15-year-old, I heard a 10-year-old say it before. Seeing somebody that's in middle school saying the N-word is like, really? Right? And it's really just because this doesn't have the same context for them that it does for somebody else, I think. They get in a different generation.
I agree, and I see LaShonda just said that like it has become culture and it's lost power within our community. And I think that kind of comes into play where like depending on who says it depends on how we react to it. So yeah, just said we say it, but no one else is allowed to use it. I do say like because of those cultural differences, it's kind of 50-50 on people who are allowing it to be more normalized. But I definitely do agree that like it does have meaning depending on the context, no matter who you are. I also see Rebecca just said about the meaning and origin tied to the word. A lot of people don't understand the meaning, but then when we also look at like our more recent education laws and bills that are being in place, they probably never will. So this is something that I feel like we almost have to prepare for with upcoming generations because they're not going to learn about this in school at all.
I see that Rebecca said most people don't understand the meaning and the origin tied to the word. I think that's the only piece that for me that I'm okay. So I'm kind of like I'm kind of like this. Like for me, when I hear a Black person say it, I don't feel it. Like I am on the like I don't say it. I tell my kids like I don't want them saying it because although they do know, y'all know this is called Blactrospective. So my kids do know like where the origin of that word comes from. We've had discussions about it. So they know the origin, but I choose not to say it. And we made the agreement. Who knows what they do when they were with their friends, not to say it, right? But when I hear someone that's from the Black culture, I feel like Black people have gone through so much. And, like we went through the 400 years of slavery. And, though our ancestors that came fresh out of that, they didn't have mental health to even like cope with those mechanisms. So if it was passed down through the line culturally through that, like that's what some people just know, right? So I feel like when I hear Black people, I'm like, oh, I'm not opposed to it so much. I do feel an ick. I'm sorry to say, I do feel an ick when I hear someone outside of that though. And I'm not talking about like white presenting Black people. If they identify as Black, then that's what they identify as, like, or like Black, Black presenting or or even Latinos that identify as Black. Like that's not where I'm like trying to hold it down or anything like that. The only time that I get the ick is when it's outside of that, especially like B, you said you heard 10-year-olds say it. I was at my daughter's soccer game and these kids, and there was probably one Black kid there and the rest were of multicultural and everybody was saying it. And I was just like cringing every time. It's one of those things that I'm not trying to police it, but let's be honest, like when you hear the word anti-Semitic, right? That's a type of policing because there's a image that wants to be presented for that Jewish culture. And I feel the same when it comes to us. And so I'm protective of our culture because I think Black people are amazing. So that's why for me, I just choose not to say it. I have the conversation with my kids not to say it. I don't judge anybody, African descendants. I don't judge them for saying it, what they choose or not, but let's have the conversation and talk about why we should or why we shouldn't. And is there, if we can get Lorena back on here, we can see what she thinks of it because I know that some of the studies that she's done, there's belief that there's also like generational impacts from that's passed through DNA, which was what I'm hoping. So I see that power people say, I feel like we shouldn't accept others outside of the Black Africans to say it, and us as Black Africans should work to extract it from our culture. This is something that has been embedded into our lives. So yes, it's a kind of conditioning that happens. I'm not in disagreement with that. LaShonda says it's 50-50. So are you saying that it's 50-50 in terms of whether you accept it or not, or like depending on who it is?
I think the 50 in reference to us having to teach it in our own children rather than it just being taught in schools. And that is the approach that's being taken. I agree. We do have the responsibility of teaching our own children Black history. Most people who are not necessarily feel that they need to teach their children Black history. So it's like schools taking that out does eliminate a lot of the information being, at least the little bit that I did get through my schooling was still more than what they're getting now.
Would you say that the education that we learned in school was still maybe a bit whitewashed or very protective of the white narrative?
I definitely think that it was both whitewashed and protective of the white narrative, but even within that, at least it was something that sparked the mental of both the white, Black, every other counterpart to be able to go home and ask further questions. Whereas now the topic's just being avoided. So how does that conversation get started in a non-Black household?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I think that is a good question. I think, but I think so, like social responsible conversations should come up often in the household, especially the 2024 and beyond. I feel like since we've gotten into the 2000s, in general, we live in a very different world today. So a lot of things should be conversations that I don't know if you guys remember, like having dinner conversations with your parents, and it's just random things just kind of come up, and oh, if this ever happened, have you heard about this? And those type of conversations come up, or just anything that's political might come up, and that is the opportunity for you to kind of have those conversations. Like you have a lot of those conversations at the dinner table, right? Or at least for me, that was how it was growing up. So I think that it's on the parents, right, to be like able to have those conversations. Like a lot of times, like you are conditioning your children in a certain way, right? Like you're teaching them what you know so that they can have the best life. And part of that is having uncomfortable conversations and then just having conversations like this or similar to this so that one, you can gauge their thinking, and then also so that you can kind of curate their thinking, right? Like you can kind of mold it in a way. You'll still allow free thought, but just allow them to have different perspectives on certain things. And so I think that that kind of falls back on the parent.
I've heard them teach my daughter Black history, and it's a that's debatable on that, right? So for me, I would honestly rather it come from me because at least it's like I have a personal tie to why this story is so important and why the fight, the struggle. Y'all don't know when Haitian, so I'm Haitian. So no, we did not have those conversations at the dinner table.
Okay.
only Jesse Quee, only Jesus. No, we didn't have those conversations, but very much so. It's part of the reason that pushed me to have those conversations with the kids because I was just like, oh, we weren't allowed to talk about like I couldn't have a boyfriend. We weren't talking about anything, like any relationship advice, any curiosity about anything outside of Jesus Christ and Haitian food. It's not happening. Okay, mommy, daddy, if you're watching, I still love you. Still love you. Okay.
Yeah. But now I think, like I always say, and I'm not a parent, but I just say from, experience of people who have children and just like things that I would like to cultivate for my kids in the future. As a parent, right, you always want to try to make sure that you do something. You want to do things that you felt were done right by your parents, and then you want to change the things that were done wrong, right? So then as a society, we get better every time, right? Each generation gets a little better. So even like my mother and my father, they did what they thought was best because their parents did not do this, right? So it's like, so I think part of this right now is like, okay, you did not have those conversations, or those conversations didn't come up, that open dialogue didn't come up. But now with your kids, you've already done that. You've already had those type of conversations, right? So now with them in the future, long in the future, when they have kids, then they will have those same conversations because they felt like that was something that was done right. And they can take that and continue that tradition on. And then we kind of fix some of these issues that kind of exist now.
So I definitely can agree with that. But I do feel like that is also still the perspective of 3 Black women or Caribbean women who were raised in that environment. So like that still goes to speak on what about the counterparts that it's like out of sight, out of mind, these problems don't affect us.
Yep.
They're not going to be having these conversations around their dinner table. Their kids aren't going to have the time to openly ask anyone else about it. So like it being removed from the school system is a large part of the problem because they're not getting necessarily that same influence of their peers or their teachers or even the little bit of knowledge that the textbooks does have in it for them to start the conversation.
Or even to your point, even having the curiosity to go home and ask the parents, right?
Exactly. Because that's what a lot of it starts. Like a lot of kids are like, I don't really know what's going on when you were in elementary school, but they're like, I remember hearing this thing about Martin Luther King, and then they go home and start a conversation. Their parents might not be the best person to be asking all the time. They might not give their child the best information, but at least that is sparking the curiosity for them to learn more. Whereas if they're not exposed to it, you run into the problem of now they're an adult, never have exposure to it, to what the stories or words or meaning that they're using, and they don't see a problem with it because when had they learned or been exposed to it any other time?
So I want to open up the floor to the audience in terms of, do you feel like homeschool is the route to go, or do you feel like it should be the responsibility of the school to teach our children about our history? Or let me just say Black history, because when I say our history, it sounds like I'm already leaning towards the side, which I am, but that's where I'm going to take it that you all are still typing, unless you girls see a response that I don't.
Oh, I was going through some of the previous comments that Power Up people said that like the N-word expresses in sisterhood or friendship, but also is addressed as actions. That is like a big controversial topic that I hear when speaking of the word. So I definitely see that perspective because that's where it goes back to depending on who and how it's said is going to be depending on whether it's said from a place of endearment or a place of ignorance. I also see that Rebecca mentioned the schools are still teaching that Christopher Columbus discovered America, even though we already know that it didn't work out that way.
It didn't work out. It didn't happen. Y'all made it up. That's revisionist history. Like, stop it. Okay.
And And they also mentioned about the oldest school belonging to a Black woman. I didn't learn that until much later, but I will say by the time I was in high school, the classes I was taking was kind of speaking on that a bit more. So again, I think that sparks the conversation of, is our school system going about it completely wrong in so many ways? Yes, but at least the exposure starts the conversation.
It's a Brand's life said, letting others teach your history opens the door to changing the history.
I like that.
I like
Good point.
that.
Yeah, can be changed, right? So that's definitely true.
One of the teachers told my daughter that the Union soldiers were kind to the slaves and that they were helpful. They were always helpful and accepting, and they agreed with freedom for all. And when I tell you, I whipped my head so hard because it was homeschool, and my daughter was just like, because she already knew that I was going to correct the teacher. She was just like, Mommy, I know, Mommy, I know. I just have to get through this. But even the fact that our kids have to do that, like they have, she's in middle school and she's having to make the conscientious decision on like, I know what this adult that's my teacher is telling me is false. I know because my mom told me, like I've been taught better, but I don't want it to affect my grade. I don't want it to have a negative impact on me. So I have to shake my head, kind of like conditioning for society, right? You go to work and something's not right at work, but you still nod your head yes. Go along with it.
D-Town Panda and Power Up People were both saying how it takes a village. I see that D-Town Panda also did say that they don't consider schools, but my only problem with not considering the school is the fact that the neighborhoods are different depending on what neighborhood you grow up in. So it's like leaving up to the parents, the neighborhoods, and just the village doesn't mean that they're going to even have exposure. Like I know I work with a vulnerable population, and I can very well say that some of these kids are not in school. They do not go to the grocery store with their family, and some of them have barely even seen Black people, much less been exposed to learning anything about them.
Rebecca says, I think it is important that basic knowledge to spark conversation. Yes, I do believe that the real burden, though, is on the parents in their village to educate their own children. With that, how many people are opposed to homeschool?
I know I personally am not opposed to homeschool. Do I think if you are the person that plans on homeschooling and never actually leaving the home, does that pose its own problems as far as like social skills and learning social behaviors? Yes. But outside of that, homeschooling is seeming like a better and better option the more regulated and like negative teachings are being brought up within the school systems.
Honestly, I think, and this is in my personal opinion, for my future children, I feel like formative years should be homeschooled. That's how I feel. So at least you're able to create a foundation for decision making and also for them to have questions, right? Like for them to question things. And I think that a lot of times when we put our children into schools early, and sometimes it's no choice, right? It's just our circumstances and we don't have a choice, right? But when we do that, now we're putting the control into somebody else to be able to create formative thoughts. And so, and then it's very hard being at home now trying to fix that, right? Like you're seeing certain things, you're like, I don't know where they picked that up from, right? And now you have to fix it. And so now they're getting countering information, right? Because the person that I'm with 8 hours out of the day, and so if not more, if they're going to school early or staying after school, right, until you can pick them up, 8 to 10 hours out of the day, they're getting information from people that are forming their thoughts. And so that's why I always feel like homeschooling is a great idea, especially in those formative years. Hi. How are you?
Wonderful.
You're back.
Telling you, I don't know what's inside of me, but whatever it is, it is trying to be blocked.
Yeah.
But I'm back.
Thank you for joining
Welcome
me.
back.
I hate that we're about Mark, but we're still going to bring you into this conversation. I hope you all can bear with us. We're going to go just a little bit longer because I want Lorena to get up in this conversation. So we were essentially right now talking about homeschool and whether it's best to homeschool or if it was best to trust public schooling. A lot of people in the chat are saying homeschool. B said that at least in the formative years, starting off with homeschools, and then after that,
The general consensus is like everyone is pro homeschool, but they are thinking like as they get older, they are going to need social skills to help them propel throughout the rest of their adult life.
So when I lived in North Carolina, there was homeschooling there. And what the parent did was the parent taught one topic, one subject, and then the community would get together and say, okay, you know how to teach history, so you do that. I'm really good at math, so I'll teach math. So it became like a community school because the parents were taking their kids to each other's houses, and then the parents were collaboratively working on schooling the children. So when I think of a village and community, which has been said multiple times in this chat, to me, that's what it looks like. I tried looking for something like that here in Orlando. I don't know where everybody is, but here in Orlando, I couldn't find it except for one after school program, and it was almost like a daycare type homeschool. So, B, you're in Maryland, so do you have anything like that? I know you don't have children yet.
I don't know if it
Maybe
exists.
something,
I don't know if it exists, but I think it's something to look into and see. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but it would be great if it does. Like, I think that's a great a tool for parents to be able to have, so that they do you have some more control over again what you're exposing your kids to, especially early in life.
How about you, Lorena?
Well, my children are 30, 30, and 34. So, oh, yeah, my kids are adults and I have amazing grandbabies. But the thing is this, like, for me, one of the things, like the village is amazing, right? The idea of the village is amazing. The village worked. The only issue that we have is that we don't know how to come together. And it's because of our programming. And we've been so programmed that we're like this isolated iceberg that roams around trying not to bump into someone else. And so when it comes to rearing children, I've written more than one book, right? So two of my books is called Choices for Parents and Choices for Parents with Teens. And so what I do in those books is, again, self-help for the parent on how to educate your child through emotional intelligence, right? About understanding ages and stages of development. So the reason I'm talking about the village and the issue with the village not coming together is what you were describing. No one is going to be able to do everything. But if we could work together and learn to work together collaboratively, again, like the village used to, then yes, homeschooling would be amazing. Yes, children would be safer. Yes, children would be more well-rounded. So kids are sitting up in these classrooms for hours and hours and hours sitting sedentary, right? We're thinking about what they're learning, but we're not understanding that that's not natural. We're not understanding that the best way for someone to learn is hands-on. The most efficient kids who learn not just how to do what they're programmed to do, but learn how to naturally problem solve, learn how to be agile in situations. What it does is it educates them on life situations. A lot of the children today, because I do mental health, a lot of them are not emotionally intelligent. And so they are intellectuals who can tell you anything and can do better than you and I in the third grade. And we're over here as old as we are, and they can do things that we still cannot do. But when they feel any pressure, when peer pressure shows up, when difference shows up, when individuality calls it their name, they don't know that it's talking because they don't understand that. Those are things that are naturally taught and naturally adapted through a human having normal human experiences. So being able to, yes, learn some math and learn their reading, but being able to afford to be taught through seeding, through cooking, through doing more hands-on things. Those are natural ways that humans develop and evolve, and that's how the village did it. And that's why the past, the elders, let's say the elders, because I'm in the evening, I'll be 56 at the end of this month, right? The elder, that's why the younger would run to them when they had a problem, because they knew they had stability. They represented strength. And then they taught them in a way where they would be able to survive if they didn't have a computer. They would be able to problem solve if they need to find food in the forest, right? And so all these things that you're talking about, very important, crucial to probably the future, because some of you haven't even had children yet. So you have some things that you're going to really face because it's not the same world. It's not the same world. And you cannot teach something that you don't know and haven't been taught. And so homeschooling is wonderful if we could get back to why it's important, not just the safety version of it, but creating a well-rounded human being.
I was kind of speaking on that earlier as well, with saying, like, if you are going to be that homeschooling parent to only be at the house, your child is still not going to end up having this well-rounded life experience to
Right.
take transpose other places. So like these groups, I know someone mentioned the Facebook groups and stuff. They definitely do like outings where it's families that whoever agree on the same things, they might do more hands-on stuff where they do a cooking class, or maybe they're cooking at somebody's house, they're going to museums, they're doing team building exercises, like all of these things that help you prepare for the real world.
I would really be challenged to be somebody's mother, a small child's mother, today. Like, it would be challenging. I love my grandchildren, but I'm telling you, they go through things that we never had to go through, even in the elementary school.
D-Town Panda said, if you kill the elders, you kill the growth. Ooh, that's absolutely right. That's where that causing division between the community, that's where that takes into account, because we are growing up in an era where children are questioning their parents, like saying, you don't know what you're talking about. And you kind of also see that in the school system. I hate to go back to the school system, but how they changed their curriculum. The math that we learned when we were in school, and that's for all of us on here, is not the same as what our parents learned and what their parents learned. So there's already that disconnect. That's like, well, my parent can't even teach me how to do math. How do I trust whatever else they say?
Mm-hmm.
Or you'll get which I listen. I encourage children trying to find knowledge, right, the right ways. But even with children challenging you and being like, I had my goddaughter tell me, I told her something, and she was like, "Are you sure? Let me Google it." She literally was like, and I was like, "Girl, I know what I'm talking about." And she was like, "Oh, you are right." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I just told you that." So, but even living in the, with these tech babies, and they will get on that technology and be like, "Oh, actually, according to Google, we got this going on."
You are right. They will fact check you so quick.
Right.
Someone hit us with it's okay, hold on, I'm gonna ask Siri. Hey Siri, and I was looking at the kid like, are you serious right now?
Exactly.
That's real stuff. It's real stuff. And where are they getting it from? Because are we different, really? Right? Are we really being created differently? We're not being created differently. It's the exposure is what is causing the breakdown. It's too much stimulation too early. And so because they're so stimulated, they're being stimulated by things we were introduced to in the 20s and when we were 20 and 30 and 40, and they're seeing things and being introduced to environments that are overstimulating them. And so what happens is then they get addicted to that level of stimulation. So then anytime you're trying to just pour wisdom, it's boring. Give them a basic fact. What do you mean? they've been programmed that everything on Google is right. Well, the people put the stuff on Google, right? Like, it's a human being. So there's many things and many motivations behind why people put certain things on. But then the parent comes or the godmom comes and says something. It's like, whoop, that check. What? What do we do though?
I think that it kind of is a double-edged sword because sometimes there is a lot of positive to that. I know one of the biggest complaints of me and a lot of people around my age is like, oh, we became adults and we still don't know how to file our taxes or we don't know how to invest. And it's like these are the type of things because of that overexposure that they are learning at an earlier age. So it's like there's a give and take where some of it is doing a disservice, but there are also a lot of big servicing things coming up for these upcoming generations.
Well, it's true in that way because you got 7-year-olds that's millionaires, right? So yeah, it's true, but the whole picture of it all, is such a negotiable thing, like because they're not getting to grow up. They're not getting the time to grow up and just be pure and just be innocent and learn things slowly. So it's beautiful, and I don't doubt any of that. But then there's a lot to be, said about the other side of it, which is not really getting a chance to be a child, not getting a chance to like just enjoy the small things, to be able to have mom cuddle up with them still and just rub their head. They don't want nothing to do with it. They don't want nothing to do with it.
You right. I'll take my mama's cuddles anything.
Oh.
Same. Most likely daddy, because I'm a daddy's girl. But I love my mama too. I love my mama
Daddies
too.
are great people too.
I want to open up this space for the audience to ask Lorena any questions or just any questions in general. Rebecca said, me too. Do we have any questions in the audience?
On the N word, what happened? Because I missed that part. Right? Maybe you can give me a little recap while people are getting their questions together, because I know they'll ask some questions.
I know that it was very. I feel like for the most part, a lot of people were unified, but there was a lot of. Is it endearment or is it a matter of being used only to spew hatred?
Power people said, even I struggle myself with refraining from saying it. My parents using it in chastisement, or fellow friends using it expressing belonging.
I can, if I could add just something that I taught to a teen group that I was doing some mentorship with. One of the things I tried to help them to understand about the term is everybody knows that a house built on a shaky foundation is a house that will fall, right? And so when we use the word, I tried to help them to explain why, like what is the dynamic and why does the older people, because they're wondering why older people try to get them to stop using that word. And one of the things that I really, when I'm teaching, I try to teach on identity, especially for the cultural kids. Because one of the biggest issues, and I am convinced of it, it was my deficiency, it's something I still work at, is identity. And so when we are growing up, depending on our environment and depending on experiences that we've had, some of our identity was stolen from us, whether it be through our self-esteem, whether it be just breaking of our spirit, whether it be trauma, some of it pull you down and to make you doubt your identity. That's what that word was used for. It meant ignorant person. That word means a person who is ignorant. That's what the meaning of the word means. And so no matter how many ways we use it and how we say that we're using it, you can't change the original version of what the word was created for. And one of the things I tried to help them see in a very simple way, because with kids you have to do that, was your mom named you a certain thing. When I come into your space, your life space, Lorena's coming into your life space. When you come into my life space, You come into my life space as who you are. When I decide that I'm going to name you something else, for whatever reason, it is saying you are not acceptable in my space. I'm going to change the relationship because Lorena came into relationship with you. So when I address you, to address the identity of who you are and what you represent, which is who came into the life space to create the relationship, and you take it and you switch it, you're disrespecting me. And not only are you disrespecting me, you're saying to me, Lorena's not enough. And so now I have to alter, again, programming. I have to alter myself to be acceptable in your space. True and authentic relationships are when people accept each other for who they are. They don't have to alter it. They don't have to call them things other than their name. They don't have to use it for any other reason because it's a demeaning thing. No matter what you want to use it and which way you want to use it, you're calling me an ignorant person. You're saying that I'm less than. And so instead of us keeping that simplistic way of seeing that and seeing that for many generations, for 400 years, it's not that you can turn around and change the meaning of a word. Now you can go to sleep on it and pretend because you feel like there's nothing you can do about it. So then we'll pretend it doesn't exist. That meaning never existed. The purpose behind the word never existed. And so then we can create other ways, sleepy land. I call it sleepy land. We can go to sleep and we can pretend that it's something that it's not. But an apple can only produce an apple. An apple will never produce a pear. And so whatever the seed of it is what it's going to continue to produce. So if you continue to use words like that, and now it's like someone abused you, but now you haven't dealt with the abuse. Now you turn around and start abusing your kids. And then now you're programming your kids to abuse their kids. And so that's the way I try to teach that, because we can't get too much into, well, this is the way I mean it and this is the way I mean it, because we can make up whatever we want to. But one thing you cannot do is turn an apple into a pear. You can't do it.
I haven't heard that analogy before, and I love it.
Pears were way back when. And let me tell you, even today, if you take a seed out of a pear and put it in the ground, it's only going to produce a pear. It matters how things originate. It matters the foundation by which things begin. You cannot change that because you refuse to deal with the stigma behind it. I think we had some questions.
Yeah, it was definitely some questions in the chat. Just piggybacking off of the narrative from earlier that we were talking about.
Awesome.
So going to the chat, I see Rebecca asked advice to teen moms.
Teens, moms and dads. Teens are teens, baby. The beautiful thing about teenagers, like, I love working with them. Nobody wants to work with teenagers. I love working with teenagers. I love working with them because they are like these evolving adults, right? So in ages and stages of development, right? Ages and stages of development. A child from 0 to 7, you show me the child, I'll show you the man. And so what that means is from 0 to 7, I'm kind of a nerd, so you'll pick this up. From 0 to 7, in developmental ages and stages, it is proven that children are literally just mini-me's of whatever their environment is. You'll notice that children walk like their parents, talk like their parent. I mean, it's like you look, and that's why they named them mini-me's, because they have now acquired all this information. They operate in what's called a hypnotic state. So they're being programmed through their environment, through whatever it is that's around them. They soak it up like a sponge. But the teenager is so challenging because after that period of time, the child starts to awaken from the hypnotic state. When they awaken from that hypnotic state, and I bet you girls all will be able to understand this. You remember when everything your mom and dad said was like gospel, and then you got to be in middle school, and it was like, wait a minute, that ain't right. And then all of a sudden, you was like, wait a minute, my mama be telling lies. Oh my God, wait a minute. I know that's not true, right? And your parents were so used to you worshiping them that when you started to challenge the dogma, it started causing a rip in the relationship. But it was just because you started to awaken, you started to mature. And so your eyes started to be able to see things very differently. You started growing up and you started putting puzzles together. You weren't just accepting the puzzle, you were throwing the puzzle down and putting it together, and then the pieces weren't fitting. Well, why do we hate that? Well, why is that wrong? I know I was taught that was wrong, but how is that our business? What makes that wrong? What makes that right? What makes that good? What makes that bad? And the teenager is in that stage. And that's why the teenager challenges people the way they challenge it, because they're challenging the dogma of things that other people have adopted as truth. So now here's a kid that came out of your body and you're supposed to be God. And now the kid is saying, oh, I found out you're not God. Like, wait a minute. Everything you say is not true. I don't want to believe that. I choose not to believe that. But the parent is used to being worshiped. The parent is used to being able to control every little thing about the child. And so that's why teenagers are a big deal for people. It's just that they're growing up. It's just that they're awakening and they're identifying that their fingerprint is different from everybody else's in the world. And so when they realize that they have a specific identity that's different from everybody else's, including their parents, they just go on a journey of discovery. And their journey of discovery is challenging to their environment because it tried to program them to be just like it. But then they start bucking. And because of ego, a lot of times with the parent, because of ego, it causes relationship problems. It causes, because it's very hard to hear that. It's very hard to have your child going up against you when they used to hug you so tight that you couldn't even loose them. And then all of a sudden they're like, I don't want to hug mom. Nope. Don't do that around my friends. Nope, don't call me that. They're gaining their own independence. And it's something that is very challenging. It's refreshing because a lot of times oh my God, they end up amazing people, but they end up very different than their parents, but the same. Because in the end, what happens is they will eventually adopt some of the things that you taught them. They won't go against everything. So the advice for the teen parent is to understand that they are a separate individual to you, that they are just on a journey. And not only that, they're dealing with things on the inside, not just mentally, but they're hormonal. They can't control that. Their bodies are developing so that they be able to reproduce and do the things that grown-ups do. And so you're going to see mood changes because those are things that are affected by hormones. You're going to see shifts. You're going to see them struggling with their identity because now they don't identify with you. So that's where we start seeing the peer pressure. They start trying to identify with their peers, with other people they think are cool, with other people who are getting the attention. And so patience is a virtue during those teen years, and get some help. I do teen parent coaching. Because some of those parents want to hang those kids up by, because of the stress. But if you have support or other parent groups, join other parent groups. Make sure that you're communicating, and then get with people who've already had older kids. That's a big deal. If they had older kids and you saw that their kids turned out really good, very stable people, then they know a few things about those stages you're going through behind them. So that's the advice, is to make sure you're well-rounded, make sure you understand and be patient with them, because they're developing emotionally, physically, in every way. And so you're going to see shifts. But like I said, in the end, a pair will produce a pair. So if you're good and you create good and you teach them great character things, they will turn out to be decent people.
So can that same advice be applied to teens, parents dealing with teens that are becoming mothers? Or
Even more.
yeah.
Even more. Because it's a dynamic. A lot of times when teens become parents, it's through their experimental time. They were experimenting. Most all teens did not say, let's have a baby. That's not, a lot of them didn't say, let's have a baby, right? That's not how it happened. Through that whole stages and ages of development, through the hormones, through all of these things happening with their bodies, and they don't understand. Now they're being attracted to each other because it's a natural evolutionary process. They came together and they already had produced the things that produce babies. And so you have to not look at them as, oh, you made this choice and now you are on your own. No, it was children experimenting, and what they did was they created what was natural to create through the action that they had. And so a parent with a teen who's having a baby needs to be even more patient, even more giving, even more supportive, because the research shows that if they don't handle it the way they need to handle it, what happens is her self-esteem comes down even more, and you'll see her keep having babies. And so, but it's not because she's just doing it to be doing it. She starts to feel minimized. And so then her self-esteem goes down, and she starts to look for love in any place she can get it. So yes, it's absolutely even more pertinent, especially for parents who are having teens who are having babies, because you're going to have to help them raise that baby. She doesn't know anything to teach the baby. And unless you want your generation to be destroyed, you're going to want to play a big part in that.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
We're going to take, it's 7:30, but we want to answer one more question. I saw that D Panda Town. Can someone read the question? Because my questions disappeared. And then we'll wrap up the show.
Yeah, D-Town Panda said, what is the biggest disconnect between generations and communities of African descent in everyone's opinion?
Not just my opinion, just everybody, right? Yeah. She said everyone's opinion.
Yeah. So I think that the biggest, in my personal opinion, the biggest thing would be the connection to culture and community, right? So there's identity there's identity that's associated with people who are of African descent that weren't displaced, right? And then with us in our own Black culture, which is a different type of culture that we've cultivated, right? Out of the fact that we were displaced is different. So I think the biggest disconnect is just that. It's just the systematic creation of those two different communities. And I think that's the reason for the disconnect. So because of that reason, now a lot of times like people who are African might not have the same connection to a person who is not from Africa, right? But is just an African American or a Black person or whatever you want to identify as. So like my culture for them might be totally different. Whereas me and Marlene, we both are Caribbean, so we can share experience on that. And then not only that, do you identify as Black, Marlene? Do you identify as Black? So
Sometimes, depending on the weather.
okay.
No, no, of
So
course.
if with that being said too, if she also grew up with Black cultural things that just are associated with our community, it's easier for me and her to connect, right? Because we have had the same system. Now, I might meet, being in the DMV, I've met many, many, many different people from African countries, right? And it's so different talking to them than it is just talking to like me and Marlene, where we're of Black descent and Caribbean descent, right? So for us, even, because I don't have the same, I don't have that same experience growing up. Just like this past weekend, for instance, I went to a baby shower, and one of the people at the baby shower is African. She's Ghanaian, and they had a conversation where they were talking about how they refer to elders as aunties, regardless, even if they're not related to them. We don't do that. For me, like I didn't grow up doing that. Like even on our Caribbean side, we don't do that either. We'll say, but for the Black side, we'll say Miss, right, Mister, or whatever. But we never called them by their first name, right? If we do, we'll be like Miss blah blah blah, right? And that's part of our culture. But essentially, we're doing the same thing, but it's just a little different because of how what we grew up around. So that's what I would say.
Absolutely.
Serena, you want to go?
Me?
Yeah, answer that question.
Yeah, I think the separation is a lot of just generational programming. Culture does matter, and all those things happen because of our first perceived view that we were separate from other people or other things, right? In nature, you'll see even that certain types, certain breeds hang with certain breeds. Everything is like a division by nature, but we've been programmed that we're not just divided by color. We're divided by beliefs. We're divided by religion. We're divided by the size of our bodies. We're divided by the company that we keep, the amount of money that we make, all of those things, right? And it has spread to the point that now I think you see the world, they're integrating. You'll see us all integrating now. And I think it's a natural tendency because we're realizing we're so separated, it's causing conflict in just the world itself, in the energy that we're putting out into the world. And it's causing more darkness and more darkness and more darkness because in the end and in the essence of who we are, we still are all one. We're still all human beings. And we still have something in us that need to relate to human beings, need to be around human beings. But now we have a programming that says, if you're not this, then I'm not going to deal with you. If you're not that, I'm not going to deal with you. And so I just think that a lot of it is programming. And so that's how we ended up breaking up into the cultures and ending up having all the separations that we do have because we can relate to those people and it's easier. And if it's such a challenge just trying to be who you are, then it's still at least easier to be with people who are like you.
So in terms of the disconnect, I don't know how many people on this call has heard of the Willie Lynch letters. Does everyone know who Willie Lynch is? I learned this through a friend. I did not learn this in school. I learned this through a friend. So when there was in slavery, there was this guy that was doing slavery the best. And so all the slave owners were saying, hey, we're having a hard time with our slaves. Like, how do we, or our enslaved people, I should say, that's the correct term, right? We're having a hard time with our enslaved people. How do we get them to be like, your plantation looks great, they listen to you, they respect you. How do you do that? And what has worked effectively with history is that with that Willie Lynch letter, he essentially said, cause distrust in between, if between old and young, between dark and light, between any type of difference that you could use for division, then use that in order to keep them separated. So I think culturally, whether it comes from, and each the Lorena speak to it, when it comes to trusting each other, there's still sometimes that disconnect amongst our own. So like even like Caribbeans will be like, oh, well, we don't trust Black Americans, or like Africans will say we don't trust that. But remember that they're seeing the news just like we are. When we open the TV, at least when I was younger, I stopped watching the news because every time it had anything to do with a Black body, it was negative. And so what does that do to your own psyche of who you think you are? And then what does that do to the outer world that doesn't live here, right? Like I hear it all the time with Haiti. Everyone's like, Haiti is so terrible. I've been to Haiti, and yes, there's a part. It's like the Detroit of Haiti is terrible, but that's not all of Haiti. And it's the same conscious thing. Like, so when they see Black Americans, they associate with all the negativity that they've heard all this time. And it causes that distrust even amongst each other. Like, I'm not Black, I'm Caribbean. I'm not Jamaican, I'm Haitian. I'm not I'm not Haitian, I'm Ghanaian, you know what I mean, or Nigerian. It causes that distrust. And I think if we can get back to a place where we start really listening to you and realizing the propaganda that's being embedded to condition us, then Black people can do anything. Even with all of our oppression, all the things that we've accomplished through oppression, our ancestors, the us who's continue to fight until this day, like everything that we've done is amazing. So if we can just get that part right, then I think that we can do anything we want to do. And I think that we it comes from healing. It comes from addressing it, like you said, looking introspectively, but then also pulling our brothers and sisters in and saying, hey, like I'm here with you. Like this is not your battle, this is our battle. I see that there's one more question. Can I ask one more question? Ish, are you here? That wasn't the question, by the way. I don't see Ish. So JX Scott said, what is your perspective on emphasis on individualism in psychology, and how may it conflict with the sacrifices made by our movement leaders who didn't prioritize self-care? Lorena, I'm going to pass this to you.
Okay, could you read that again?
Yes. So Justin X. Scott 1 said, what's your perspective on the emphasis on individualism in psychology, and how it may conflict with the sacrifices made by our movement leaders who didn't prioritize self-care?
I think, when it comes to individualism, when we talk about identity, everything is about identity. Like, that's what it means. Like, we lost who we were. We lost who we were, but we kept the essence of who we are. Like, we can't be killed, we can't be destroyed. That is like proven. Like, we've been through oppressions, we've been through all those things. And so the people who came before us, remember, we are evolving generation after generation after generation. And so they did what they knew was best to do, and they still grew the movement. Things still changed, it still ignited certain things. Yes, they neglected certain things, but even at my age, I'm neglecting certain things that my children will not neglect. And so as each generation comes forth, we become more wise and more awakened. And so that individualism, when it comes to our identity and being sure and confident of the people we are, where we come from, our origin, is important. I don't find any of it important when it comes to us as a people, because we are all one. And the individualism, if we camp out on it, it feeds the separation. But if we understand that we are individually a part of a whole body that is creating a movement that is going to drive more freedom, more exposure, more power as we grow, because our kids are more bold than we are. Our kids are more open than we are. Our kids are more knowledgeable than we are in just the world itself. And so I see the generations evolving, and I see them being better at the self-care, because they've now understood that they can't abandon that. If they do abandon that part, they don't last as long as they could to empty all the way out, right? And so, yes, there needs to be balance. I think that's the biggest deal. We need balance. We need to understand that we are individuals who are making up a unit. And we were created to be a unit, and united is how we're going to stand. We're not going to stand being separated, but we are going to unite and become stronger if we bring our individual talents, individual strengths, and combine them so that we can continue to grow and evolve the generations, evolve the nations. Like, we're going to have kids that are powerful beyond measure. And so those who paved the way, I can only say that I'm very grateful for them. But I can say in this stage, I always say I'm in the evening of my life, right? In this stage, I understand that there is no perfection. Like, we just can do the best that we can do. And as long as that best builds for a better and then builds for a better, then we are doing what we've been evolved as human beings to do, as a human species to do. Because no matter what we say and no matter how things have been done, we can defrag those things and start teaching truths. Once we start teaching those truths, people can't do anything but continue to evolve in the truth and become more and more authentic. And so then we capture back our identities. Then we understand that we don't have to be perfect, that we're perfect just the way we are. Because even our inadequacies give room for somebody else's strength to combine with us so that we can make for a perfect, united species of humans, right? So it's so amazing where we're going, but we have to be open to that. We have to be open. I think that they did the best that they could do. I think that, yeah, they did, their demise came a lot earlier due to a lot of different ways, but it'll be the same for every human being. But every generation will learn from what they've done and start growing and growing and growing, because we are going somewhere. It may look like we're not, but there's never been as many of us who are united, even though we struggle with being united. There's never been so many of us until now that are united as we are, who speak out, who's free, who's brave enough to stand up for what is right, and who's trying to bring back that authenticity. So then, the more you do it, the more identity your child will keep to themselves so that they become the leaders of the future. And I just think that that's what we're evolving into a great nation. Did that answer the question? I hope it answered the question.
One half of it, but yeah, I was going to actually ask you about the. I know it was a long question though. So
Yeah, it
then, do
was.
you?
I was trying to reach.
So do you think that because of individualism and people like essentially focusing on that, um, in terms of like the psychological process of that, and then when you go to movement leaders, they don't necessarily put that first. It's essentially about, it's not about self-care. It's more so like, what are we doing as a united front? Do you think that's a confliction? And if it's a conflict, do you think that, how would you want say that the movement leaders should move forward? What would be your advice for that?
Right. I think it's an imbalance, but I think it's a human thing. I think it's a human thing. But the more we are together and the more open we are to each other, we can help each other in those areas, because people outside can see you, right? But are they free to challenge you? Are they free to say, this is where I see we're missing it, right? One of the things that you're going to realize about leaders in general, great leaders will always think sacrifice first. They will always put themselves to the side. Every great leader, and they'll never be different. That's what makes you a leader. There's a chief, and then there's the Indians. But if the chief is not who he is and individualized and thinking about the Indians, they're all going to be destroyed. He's the shepherd of it all. And so leaders, you'll find them falling in that area almost constantly with the self-care, with the issues with the individualism, with all of these things. One of the things about being a leader is if you have never been a leader of people, you don't understand what that's like, where you're literally a human being who's taking on that type of responsibility. There's always going to be somebody got something to say, always somebody that's got a negative, always somebody who can see you because you're still human. You just took on the responsibility of leading it. And so if we don't have our psyche together, if we are not focused on what our mission is, you will never accomplish that mission because it's too many things coming at you and always pulling you. So you'll never see a leader who is totally balanced. You're never going to see it. But I think as the younger leaders, though this generation now, I think they're understanding more about the importance of it and they're trying harder. But the beautiful thing about it is they're not pretending they know. You'll notice they'll have entourages. They'll have other people on the side. Why do they have those people? Some of them have them because each person is accountable for some part of their life to keep them balanced. Okay, you're doing too much right now. Okay, well, you really need to slow that down. Okay, we can't go there. So they have people in place who helps them because a leader's mind is focused on leadership. And a lot of times they are sacrificial people and they will neglect other things. But when you have the right support, when you have the right people around you, when you have the right people on your team, they can create the balance for you that one human being could never do. We were never created to be alone. That's why we are able to duplicate humans, because we were never created to be one. We were always created to be united, though. And so they're getting wiser where they're keeping people around them who are supporting them and holding them accountable and helping them to stay more balanced so that they can stay more healthy in every way. Did that answer your question? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Okay.
you. Yes, I believe so. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. I know we had some technical difficulties. For all of you that stood in strong with us, thank you so much. I see that we lost B Speaks and we lost Ish. I see B speaking in the crowd. So, Lorena, tell the folks where they can find you and where we can find your book when you're going to do
Yes. Well, I will be back with you guys. We already talked about it when we get the book relaunched. So the Heart of the Matter is going to be relaunched. We've made a few changes, not a lot of changes, but we are going to relaunch it. We're going to do we're going to put it up for pre-order. And as far as anyone who needs to reach me, what we do is I am a therapeutic counselor, but my passion is life coaching. And I love life coaching because I believe that everyone has what they need inside of them. I believe a lot of times we don't know how to utilize the tools that we have. Our paths are all specifically made. We're not cookie cutters. We have goals, we have things in mind that we want to accomplish. And I believe that people have what's inside of them to accomplish their specific dreams. And so that's what I do is I help and I empower people, help guide them and get them in a place where they can actually start to do the work. And then I walk with them through the work. And so you can reach me, anyone who is interested in any lifestyle management coaching, at 702 592 1107. 702 592 1107. My email is LORENA.Jefferson, the last name, 68, year I was born, at Gmail. And if you'd like to set up an appointment or you'd like to do a consultation, 15-minute consultation for free to see if we'll be a good match, I would love to do that. You guys are welcome anytime to reach out. And I am so grateful to you guys for having me on your podcast. I love Girl Time. So thank you so much.
All right, perfect. Oh, your mute. Sorry.
Yes.
I'm gonna get used to that. I promise.
Yes.
So as you all see in the chat, Lorena's email has been dropped as well as phone number. Thank you, Be Speaking, and thank you, D Mute. Thank you all for joining us. This will be released if you want to rewatch it and just pull some of the nuggets that you got from this episode. And I know for Ish, I know we couldn't get back Ish, but I guess I'm going to say for all of us, just remember this was not like to just have an end all be all answer. It was just to start the conversation.
Absolutely.
Sharing, take it back to your homies, take it back to your family members, and just have that conversation. Like discuss the N word and what that means, and like why they use it. It doesn't have to be an argument. Also, just talk about homeschooling and community building and anything of that matter. Like the more and more that we communicate as a community, the better that we're going to be in the long run. And with that, I'm going to say peace out. Do you ladies want to say any lasting words?
It was a great show. I really, really appreciate being able to dialogue. And so that when we're getting this wisdom out here, it's going to change lives. So you girls are doing an amazing thing. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you, Lorena.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, honey.
All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your evening, and thank you so much.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.
Blactrospective.